Kristen, you can just fit it in when it seems appropriate. I'll send it because it's not opening up real quick. So.
This is not America. Little piece of you.
Hello and welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. I'm your host, Brendan Traynor, and my co-host, Leland Fragrant. What's that, Leland? Breaking news. President Putin will announce the final Iowa caucus results later today.
Well, somebody should, because I hear we're going to get the results around the vernal equinox sometime.
Probably after the New Hampshire primary.
What a disaster. Can you believe that?
I know.
What on earth?
And you know, the conspiracy theory has some legs on this one.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Mayor...
which conspiracy theory?
Well, yeah. I mean, Mayor Butt proclaimed himself the winner after the app he helped pay for fails. Mm-hmm. And the person that owns the app is, they're all Clintonistas.
Yep.
So they don't like Bernie at all. Mm-hmm. And the primary one was a pro-Israel settlement backer, Seth Clarman. Now, that's a name we haven't heard before, but
I've heard that before.
Oh, have you?
No, I'm just kidding.
He's just another one of these billionaire pro-Israel wealthy Zionists that is backing Buttigieg. And so the app failed, and the Democrats, are complaining that nobody told them math would be involved in this election. So they had to actually count and add and subtract. But
yeah, turns out they had to count the votes.
Yeah. And hashtag Mayor Cheat is trending on Twitter.
Mayor Cheat, yeah.
Yeah, Mayor Cheat, yeah. Yes. And the name of the app, which was supposed to be transparent, the name of the business that owns the app is called The Shadow. And this is supposed to be the most transparent app ever.
You're not going to say The Shadow knows, are you?
Yes. Who knows who won? Only The Shadow knows.
So what is Buttigieg aiming for? What is he seeking out of this, do you think?
Well, it's hard to, the fact is he does appear to be a typical slick candidate. He's kind of a gay Bill Clinton in that way. You know, he manages to always say the right things without saying anything, really.
Yeah.
So he's it looks like he's aiming for a cabinet post, and with his vast military experience, being a chauffeur over in Iraq for a few weeks.
In whose administration?
Well, yes, that's it. Is he a stalking horse for Hillary? Is that his role here?
Yeah.
It's possible.
I mean, the fact that he came out on top, what was it, still, 29% of the vote is still uncounted?
Right.
So he came out on top, but he's just squeaky over the top, right?
Yes, just squeaky. But did you see his victory speech? He immediately gave a victory speech. So
immediately.
Is that telling? I mean, did he know in advance?
How would he have gone out on a limb to suggest that he was the victor when he didn't really know?
And did you notice in the speech the whole front row was black folks?
I didn't notice.
Yes, in his victory speech, the entire front row was black folks with a very attractive young black woman right over his shoulder. She was obviously the focal point. Your eyes would focus on her. But, so he, but, when blacks look at Wonder Boy, they just see Wonder Bread.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Well, he's very unattractive to me for what I look for in a presidential candidate. So it doesn't work for me. But obviously, he apparently took over one of the two top spots in the state somehow.
Yeah, what I was trying to say is I don't think he's going to flame out after this election. I think he's going to be hanging around, tormenting us for years to come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, he's no longer mayor.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. So he
did he resign, or is his
term his term expired. So,
okay.
So he's no longer in. Is it South Bend? Is that
South Bend? Yes. Yeah. So another city left in ruins by the Democrats.
Yeah, exactly.
He's walking away from it. What? Me worry?
Yeah. Well, it is funny to watch. I mean, you have to admit, unless you have a stake in this, unless you're just passionately anti-Trump, this is a lot of fun to watch.
I know.
Because they are thoroughly humiliated by the effect of, 3 years of Trump success.
Right. Yes. And the parts where they should be resisting Trump, like foreign policy, they're totally on his side for the most part, and except for the the squad perhaps, but this, and the Nevada Democratic Party also was heavily invested in the Shadow app. And, So they've already
and they pulled out on
it,
right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So on February 15th, the Dems are going to have a big rally to get out the Hispanic vote, which is, Nevada is the first real primary, because unlike Iowa and New Hampshire, it's not primarily white anymore. It's large. It has a large Hispanic and also a black population, especially in Clark County. So so there will be a large march, and Bernie apparently is doing well with Hispanics.
Well, that's what they're saying.
Yes.
Yeah, I really can't find it in my heart to believe that. But we'll see.
He seems to be formerly he was a left populist, or he has been a left populist, and he was against subsidized immigration, mass immigration, even from Latin America, on the theory that it hurts, workers' wages. Mm-hmm. So he appears to have essentially abandoned that position, and he's now much more pro-immigration, and he figures that he'll compensate for the loss in wages by pushing unionization.
But I think the more telling part of this entire story, this episode of 2 nights ago, is the turnout.
Very low.
Very low turnout.
Very low
There's
turnout.
no enthusiasm for these guys.
Nope.
And girls.
Yeah, I mean, anti-Trumpism can only take you so far, I guess.
After 71% of the vote this morning, I understand that Biden is only up by less than 1,000 votes over Amy Klobuchar.
Right.
My favorite, Amy Klobuchar.
Talk about Wonder Bread. I mean, she's the female version. Yeah, I know.
No wonder there's grist for an assumption of conspiracy here.
Right. Yes.
Because that does not bode well for Joseph Biden.
No.
It's your worldwide invite to Barbecue, the Butcher's Kitchen.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Want to expand your advertising dollar? Sponsor this or any America Matters program by calling 775-827-8900, extension 2. Now, back to the show.
And welcome back to Talking Truth to Power. I'm your host, Brendan Traynor, and my co-host, Leland Faegre. And we were talking about the failed, totally messed up Iowa caucuses.
It's a calamity.
Calamity, I know.
It was hysterical.
And these are the people that want to take over health care, right?
Yeah. I'd say get them out of the DMV, frankly.
Yes. So anyway, what can we add to that? I mean, we could make a footnote that there was a Republican caucus, and President Trump trounced Bill Weld, the former Libertarian candidate for office for president.
And one other apparently was on the Republican side,
Walsh, Michael Walsh or something?
Joe Walsh, yeah.
Joe Walsh,
Not the guitar player.
No,
yeah,
okay.
A different Joe Walsh.
We'll keep that in mind.
Turns out there's another one.
So Weld got one delegate who is going to feel awful lonely when they get to the Republican convention.
That guy's a disgrace. Think if he was that was the first time I think I did not vote for the Libertarian ticket.
Okay.
Was when Weld was...
Weld was on it?
Was Johnson's running mate. And for good reason. I mean,
well, Mitt Romney endorsed him. What more do you want?
Yeah, exactly. Massachusetts, be damned, you know.
Mm-hmm. So the State of the Union happened last night, and I had to work yesterday. I didn't get to see it, but I saw snippets of it replayed on C-SPAN and, of course, Fox News. The other two networks, of course, were filled with the talking heads denouncing everything that happened. But
which talking heads? Which side were you on? The
CNN and MSNBC.
I actually kind of like watching CNN when there's vote totals coming in.
Okay. Yes.
There's something about that side that seems to be, I don't know. Is it just a better format for announcing the results? I don't know what it is, but I tend to stay over on CNN when they're counting votes.
They have more graphics and things like that.
Yeah, I guess it is. Yeah, and by the way, they did have the numbers before Fox did.
Okay.
And that's another interesting part of that story.
Yes.
Yeah. Whoever's counting the votes over there gave them to CNN before they gave them to Fox. Interesting.
So, there were good things and bad things about it. The good points was when Trump talked, the most inspiring probably to me was when he talked about school choice. And the Republicans are starting to get more serious, Betsy DeVos, in pushing for school choice.
I was so glad to hear that, yeah.
Yes.
It's a very important part of it. Should be right up front and center of the Republican Party platform.
Exactly.
And you noticed how uncomfortable the Democrats were last night with virtually everything. I mean, he baited them, basically. Mm-hmm. Trump is so brilliant at that, you know. Everything that he brought forward embarrassed the other side of the aisle. Mm-hmm. They couldn't stand up for it. You know, I'm not sure who they're trying to please. I know that constituency is really stupid because they went to public schools.
Right.
But apart from that, it really was a spectacle of extraordinary proportions.
And, he just triggers so many people in so many ways. It is fun to watch. I mean, for the bad part about it was, again, his foreign policy bellicosity and his...
Guaido.
Guaido in particular. Just when I thought he had lost interest in Venezuela because Guaido was seen by Trudeau in Canada, but so far he had not been seen by Trump, and there were indications Trump had actually spurned him a couple of times, ignored him. But then he gave him this, opportunity to stand up at the State of the Union address. And I was just, amazed by the standing ovation that he got. Although the cameras
Nancy even stood up for him.
Who? Nancy? Yes, I saw that. The cameras didn't really focus on the women in white that I saw. They were on the other side of so I don't know if many of them stood up. Mm-hmm. But they more left, feminist left on the party. But
all the House managers sat together. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
No. So, yeah.
Nadler next to Schiff, for example.
Did they fight over the seat?
Couldn't see any fighting.
Who's going to get the better camera angle?
Yeah, right. Doesn't mean they weren't fighting, but I didn't see it.
Yeah. And, when Guaido stood up, he looked like a Hollywood Central casting dream for the typical Latin bandito you see in B-movies, you know?
He had a nice suit.
Yes. Mm-hmm. But it's just his figure. And, he's losing power. He's no longer going to be the president of the National Assembly, which is where he got his so-called legitimacy. And
does Elliott Abrams know this?
I think we have to notify Elliott so he can get on the cell phone.
Because I still think he has him waiting in the wings.
So the Maduro also appears to be winning in the Venezuelan Supreme Court as far as the new elections coming up, and this National Assembly may dissolve. Now, I'm not totally up to it. I didn't have a chance to review it, but apparently one of the problems of Venezuela is that there are two assemblies fighting for jurisdiction.
So it's a bicameral house?
No, just two separate
assemblies.
Legislatures. Yeah, the Supreme Court allowed Guaido's National Assembly, which is primarily comprador. By that I mean, let's face it, Latin American politics is still heavily tinged with racism, and if you're white, you're right, and if you're brown or black, go back.
Is it okay to be white in Venezuela?
It is okay to be.
Oh, okay.
More than okay to be white in Venezuela, because they have they're the remnants or the remainder of the original Spanish ruling elite, and they have all kinds of ties to influence and money. So the Bolivarian revolution in Bolivia, which has now been overthrown in Venezuela, was to try and give the poor, the mostly mixed race, black, mestizos, and so on, the more power. So there are these two assemblies, but the Maduro's assembly has veto power, as I understand it, from the Supreme Court, and the National Assembly, after this election, may be actually dissolved, which would take away a lot of the power of the opposition. But, I just don't like it when Trump is calling people dictators that are not dictators. Like Putin is not a dictator. He's been through numerous elections. We ought to know because we tried to rig him. And Venezuela the same way. I mean, the election itself was certified by international observers, and he may be authoritarian by our standards, but he is not a dictator. And if he was a dictator, would Guaido be free to be roaming around the world trying to raise support for him? I mean, he'd be in shackles.
He seems to go in and out pretty freely, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. Yeah. So that's, the tendency of both parties to label people as all good and all bad, or countries and nations like all good and all bad. Like, obviously, Israel is all good; it can't do anything wrong for most of the politicians in Washington. And Russia and Iran are all bad; they can't do anything right. They have no claim to any legitimacy. So that's what I object to the most about our foreign policy. So another good point, though, that was brought up was emphasis on criminal justice reform. Mm-hmm. Now, the president sometimes sounds like the bill he passed was, he did it, it's over. But then again, he is campaigning, I think, on more criminal justice reform.
He ran an ad during the Super Bowl on Sunday.
Well, about that woman that he pardoned, that Kardashian.
Alice Johnson, I think.
Yes, that Kardashian lobbied him to do. Mm-hmm. And
it was a good ad.
Yes. And there's no doubt that the Republican Party is trying to get more black votes. Mm-hmm. They would like to see that raise.
Well, some of the more recent polls, if you've seen them, are pretty amazing.
Well, they have good arguments.
Yeah.
They have good arguments to
they're
attract
up over
more black
30% in some of the more recent polls of the total black vote.
30%?
Over 30%.
That would be amazing if they could. I don't know if that's been done.
No, it's never been done before.
No. By a Republican.
But keep in mind, not just one poll. There have been 2 or 3 of these things that take him over 30%.
Well, yeah, and so kudos for that. And again, I'm generally in favor of criminal justice reform, fewer bail for poor people, and the end of,
well, you just got to get the marijuana smokers out of the prison so you can fill them up with rapists and hardcore criminals.
Yes, of course. Unclog the courts, and the only problem is that when the left gets in charge of it, they all of this allowing petty thefts to go on in California,
Texas
like
too,
it's like $750. Thefts of less than $750 are not going to be prosecuted. So naturally, now you have organized criminals running around, robbing stores, always trying to keep it less than $750.
I hear it's a bigger problem in Texas.
Yes, in Texas too.
Yeah.
I didn't know they were so gung-ho in criminal justice.
I think that's not going to last long.
No. So, but then criminal justice reform does have to be looked at. I know that there's a lot of contradictory statistics that we have to try to ingest. Like, for example, yes, there's too much emphasis on, arresting black people, but also black people do commit most of the violent crime in the country. Black on white crime is a real thing. So there's going to have to be some imaginative solutions to these problems, and we're hopeful that at least both parties are at least paying lip service, and hopefully more than lip service, to the situation.
Oh, it looks like Mitt Romney is going to vote against Trump guilty, it says here.
He is. So he's going to vote against.
Businesses, writers, check this out. Go to lrpnv.com to get your printing, publishing.
You're invited to join Business Connections with Anita every Wednesday from 10 to 11 a.m. here on 1180 a.m. KCKQ America Matters.
Unable to listen to the whole show? A recording of today's program will be available later today. Visit americamatters.us and click on the podcast link. Now, back to the show.
Let's count the bets and find out. That's one. One bet. Two bets. Three fabulous flyers. What? Nothing? Nothing happened. Where's the confetti?
That's what
Where's
the
the balloons? Isn't
Democrats
3 the number of the day?
found out in the course of their counting the votes night before last. Nothing was happening.
So that was the Count from Sesame Street?
I always liked that
Count.
character. Yeah.
Yeah.
Count Von Count. They could have used him.
Yes, they sure could have. Yes. So what else can we talk about? Just look out, Nevada. Here they come. And getting back to the State of the Union, another thing I didn't like was Trump's beating the drums about sex trafficking. You know, once again, we had the fabulous Super Bowl, and it was one of the best Super Bowls ever.
It really was.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But we had all the usual reports from the rescue industry. And let's be very clear. There is a whole industry that arises about anything that the government gets heavily involved in, and this idea of sex trafficking in America, we have an industry that's making a lot of money off of it. One group that I don't know if they're still on the Nevada Attorney General's website, but they were when we had a Republican Attorney General, is the Polaris group, which constantly uses discredited statistics to make its points about the number of people that are trafficked and the age of the people that are trafficked, and all of these things have been debunked, but they continue to be out there. But so once again, it was claimed by the rescue industry that Super Bowl would be the site of much more intense sex trafficking, and you can imagine Huggy Bear, the pimp, rolling up with the stretch limousine outside the Super Bowl in Miami. And
I thought that was really a stretch.
Yeah, and all these manacled sex slaves getting out. And I must have sex for money. I must have sex for money.
Fitting the profile,
yes.
of the sex trafficker.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like.
Right. And, it's just not happening to the extent that they claim. In fact, the number of women that actually have pimps is way lower than is imagined, and the number of violent and abusive pimps is even lower than that. But anyway, once again, the reports did not materialize. I have heard no reports of enormous stings and sex trafficking. What apparently they are going after right now are the Asian massage parlors, which has somewhat more to do with immigration and with asset forfeiture than anything else. I mean, Robert Kraft in Miami, the president of the Patriots, he had a lot of courage they used a sneak and peek warrant, which is supposedly, don't tell Harry Reid, but it was supposed to be for...
I won't.
for, espionage and foreign catching terrorists, but they use it for all kinds of things. They investigate these places for 2 or 3 years at a time, wasting an enormous amount of resources that could have been used, as you said, Leland, capturing actual rapists and killers, to find out who's having sex with who for money, and
child predators. That
kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's how they got the Patriots owner, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, but he had the resources to fight back and hire attorneys, and they're suing them over this use of the sneak and peek warrant, invasion of privacy for the shots they got, the videos that they took, and these places, the women, the owners are rarely ever really responsible for deliberately encouraging the happy ending in these Asian massage parlors. Most of the women that are arrested are in their 50s, so they're not, child sex slaves by any imagination. They're not teenagers, and they do it to make extra money, and they send a lot of the money back to their families in China that are still poor, it's just a terribly racist thing. Asians have been picked on by both parties in recent years, and people are not unaware of that. They're not the typical minority group that that are always being accosted in the media coverage. Because they're rather independent. They're very smart as a rule. I mean, I'm not trying to say that they're all smarter than white people, but they are normally intelligent. They're normally hardworking, and this has been immigrants to this country are always involved in the service industry, whether it be healthcare as nurses, aides, and or in the sex industry. And gosh, I mean, who the heck cares whether somebody has a happy ending or not to his massage? It's really none of the government's business, and it just leads to all kinds of corruption. So,
well, if it were up to Mitt Romney,
yes,
he'd have something to say about it.
Yes, I know he would. He has something to say about the impeachment. Did you say he's come out and said he's going to vote for impeachment?
He's looks like the lone Republican not to acquit.
All right, so now it's a bipartisan impeachment, and Nancy will be crowing about that.
We have a lot of Mormons within the sound of our voices here in Nevada.
Yes.
And I wish they'd call the show and explain his behavior to me, because I don't get that.
Yes, I don't get it either, and I'm sure a lot of Mormons that we have known and worked with in the years do not approve of Mitt.
But I think he's embarrassed them.
Yes.
They won't call the show because they're embarrassed. Why would they try to defend him? I wouldn't.
I wouldn't, no, because he's two-faced,
He's just the worst of the worst.
Okay, so we had a State of the Union, which is, Thomas Jefferson sent a letter to Congress with the State of the Union, and I think it's getting to the point where it's becoming a circus. And
well, it got off to a bad start because Nancy Pelosi did not address the president as he entered the room in the normal protocol.
Right.
So she apparently very briefly introduced the president as he came into the Senate chamber, and then as he came to the podium, Trump refused to shake Nancy's hand, it would appear. I mean, I wouldn't want to touch her hand, frankly. Wouldn't bother me a bit to ignore a handshake, but he didn't shake Pence's hand either, for whatever reason. And then at the conclusion of the speech, she arrogantly and I think really degraded the body by tearing up the speech, which interestingly is apparently an archived document that is supposed to be an historical document for the sake of future attendees and future tours through the Senate chamber, etc., and she just ripped it up.
That particular one that she tore up, because it was given to her at the speaker.
He handed it to her, and you could just see her through the entire speech. She was agitated. She didn't know what to do with herself. You watch her facial. I wasn't watching Trump. I was watching her.
Oh, really?
Through the whole speech, and she was just agitated, and she just didn't know what to do with her mouth. Didn't know what to do with her eyes. Didn't know what to. Well, and then at the very end, we now know why she was a little agitated, because she had planned to do that all along.
So, I mean, it's been a pretty bad week for Nancy.
Bad week for all of them on that side of the aisle. I mean, he has humiliated them, even though he's going through an impeachment process. It's an extraordinary victory for him. How do you turn that into a victory?
Yes,
only Trump can do that.
Yeah, his ratings are above 45%.
49.
49.
And that's a Gallup poll. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's sloppily above 50% now. If Gallup can give him 49, it's over 50. The Rasmussen has to be 53, 54, I would guess.
So, keep on trumping. That's all I can say. Mm-hmm. And there's nobody that can stand up to him that I can see in the Democratic field.
And that's what Chris Matthews and some of the more propaganda-like pundits would say, is that there really isn't anybody to beat him.
Right.
And that's why they tried to pull off this desperate case of impeachment.
I hear Matthews was in tears at the prospect of Bernie winning the nomination.
I think he's close to tears all the time. All these people are joyless.
Right.
They're just not having fun. And we are.
Right.
Trump's having fun. When he goes out there and takes on these people, he loves that.
Greg Gutfeld over the weekend said that Trump could cure the coronavirus.
Coronavirus, yeah.
Yes. And the media, the left, took him seriously, and they had all kinds of spots proving that he could not cure the coronavirus.
He wasn't capable of doing that?
It's another fact-checking victory for the left.
Oh, I see. Well, that's a shame, because I wish he could.
Yeah, that's another thing we don't know the effects of right now, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that in the next segment. But and also we might want to touch on the aftermath of the Iran missile strike, or what's going on in Syria. We haven't touched on any foreign affairs yet.
Mm-hmm. It's below the radar in the news generally, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Not a lot going on in the Middle East after what had happened there a few weeks back. So.
Right.
Well, anyway, don't go away.
Mm-hmm.
Business owners and entrepreneurs know that good information is priceless. Just one great idea can make all the difference. Hi, this is Joe Morabito, host of...
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
To join the conversation, call 844-790-TALK. That's 844-790-8255. Now, back to the show.
Hey, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. I'm your host, Brendan Traynor, and my co-host, Leland Faegre. And we mentioned at the end of the last segment that foreign affairs has been pretty much under the radar for the last week or so. But
a couple weeks, I think.
Yeah. But one of the things that hasn't been mentioned is that the injured toll in the Iran missile strike is now over 60.
Is it?
Yes, and it started out
I heard it was 30, so it's twice that many.
Yeah. And they were just headaches. But now, the thing about traumatic brain injury is that you don't know what will happen in the future, if it'll get worse or go away. So... and also there are reports that the infrastructure damage to the airbase was more than was originally reported. And another thing that we don't hear about is the number of Katyuska rockets.
No, we don't hear about that at all.
No. They were originally...
I was just talking to somebody the other day. He didn't
know it at all.
Yeah.
And that's they were originally called Stalin's organs. If you've ever seen World War II footage, they're usually mounted on a truck, and it's like a rectangular array of tubes, and they just fire unguided missiles out of them. Mm-hmm. They're much better than mortars, which is what the Allied armies generally use.
Much better than mortars, yeah.
And they have been firing on U.S. positions in Iraq off and on, and it's, of course we're going to blame it on the Iranians, but it's more likely that there are several distinct Iraqi groups that want us out of the country. One of them is actually more or less Marxist, called the Selenans, I believe. I'm sure I didn't get that right, but at any rate, they're there. And another one, of course, is Muqtada al-Sadr.
You mean like so many of our members of Congress?
Yes, they're they're basically communist. And the other one is the Muqtada al-Sadr, the Shia cleric who is a nationalist.
That guy's still around.
Uh-huh.
I remember him playing such a prominent role after our invasion.
Right. Until he called off his militias, but they inflicted quite a bit of damage on us. We probably
bought him off, basically.
Yeah, or the
Iraqi Parliament did.
Yeah, something triggered the fact that he decided not to pursue armed resistance, but he organized the Million Man March on Baghdad, which again was not covered so much in the media, protesting the American occupation in Iraq.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. So these rockets have been landing in the Green Zone in Baghdad and other areas, and they're not killing people, but they're doing a certain amount of damage, and they're keeping our troops mostly hunkered down in their barracks because of the danger they could pose.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Yes. So we're not hearing anything about that. Now, another thing that is not covered was last week, or I think it was 10 days ago, Iran announced that the airplane that was downed in Afghanistan was downed by the Taliban, and they're saying that Ayatollah Mike was killed in the accident. If you're not familiar with Ayatollah Mike, we've talked about him. He's another one of those nameless, faceless, deep state operatives.
Very deep state.
Yes.
Very deep state.
He supposedly is the person who kept the FBI reports about the activities of the 9/11 crew, the Saudis, from reaching the CIA. He blocked transmitting the report. So,
which is why it was like this around there.
Yeah,
nobody seemed to know anything.
Like taking flying lessons without bothering to learn how to land.
Very suspicious behavior.
Yeah.
I mean, why conceal that? Who was he afraid of knowing about that?
Yes.
Very bizarre.
Yes. And so afterwards we got all kinds of hand-wringing about how the agencies were not talking to each other and so on, but Ayatollah Mike was one of them. So they claimed that he was killed. The U.S. has denied it. But even by naming him, we have who in Washington, D.C., what reporter is going to actually investigate the Iranian claims and try and give us a proof-of-life photo of Ayatollah Mike?
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, we'd have to call Peter Parker from the Spider-Man series and send him out to take a photo.
There's got to be a picture of him in a bar someplace in D.C.
But even if they didn't get him, it's an implicit threat. In other words, what the Iranians are saying by making this announcement, even if it's untrue, is that we know where you are, and we can get you in a myriad of ways, and we'll have plausible deniability. We're not the Taliban. If the Taliban does it for us, or if another group does it for us, even if it's not directly affiliated with Iran, then who will know? Who will actually know who assassinated whom?
And that's job one, plausible deniability.
Right. Yes.
You have to have that.
Mm-hmm. Any U.S. president will tell you that.
Yeah, anybody.
So the fact is that the Iranians are not through, and we don't know what will happen next, and we have to, look for an off-ramp here. And so far, we haven't been getting it. The EU has been unhelpful. They are basically showing themselves to be poodles of the United States, scurrying after us and Israel. So we're going to have a year of tension and possibly war. If not this year, then possibly after the election. Although the Iranians are showing that any real hot war over there would be disastrous for the infrastructure. I mean, we're sending more Patriot missiles to Saudi Arabia, but they're useless. I mean, they just don't work against drones and cruise missiles and so on. They're not even that good against ballistic missiles, as we've seen.
Yeah. Well, that's par for the course when it comes to guerrilla warfare. The sophistication of our technology doesn't work against some enemies.
Yes.
And we bog ourselves down, and man, it's horrible.
You just have to look for that little opening in the Death Star.
Yeah.
And send Luke Skywalker in after it and blow the whole thing up.
And then it's an intractable mess.
Mm-hmm. So, speaking of violence and guns,
How about that Virginia
yes,
down, huh?
Yes. In the aftermath of Virginia, we are realizing that, the Second Amendment and the gun rally is a show of white power. Now, you're going to call me a white ethno-nationalist or something like that, but it's true.
Is it okay to be white in Virginia?
It's now okay to be white in Southern Virginia, anyway.
Okay.
But the overwhelming gun owners statistically in America are white. Now, I don't have the exact statistics in front of me, but I think it's something in the order of 2/3 of white people own a gun, and only about 1/3 of black people and Hispanics. So it's definitely a white phenomenon, and the lack of violence and the absolute adherence to decorum that the white protesters showed is making the left nervous. They're saying that violence was avoided. Even though the whole thing was supposed to be nonviolent. I mean, there's no question that.
Yeah.
But if a white guy shows up with a gun, then he's a terrorist.
Right. Yeah.
Even though
first in their mind. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though most of the violence, as we said before, most of the actual violence in America is black on white crime. And black crime in general, but the left has blinders when it comes to that. So we just have to, muddle through for the rest of this year. But hopefully, Trump is going to be a staunch supporter of the Second Amendment, except for little things like the bump stock, which they banned unconstitutionally. But that's a very minor thing. I'm sure they figured they could sacrifice one or two small businesses in Texas in order to get that point made. But other than that, they have to continue. They will continue to be strong Second Amendment champions. The Republicans will.
Well, that was one of the issues that he brought up last night.
Oh, sure.
In the State of the Union address, along with he wanted to plant more trees.
Oh, okay.
Did you hear that one?
No, I didn't. I missed that one.
You'd have thought they would have stood up for that one.
Yeah.
Don't Democrats like trees?
Yes, but they like trees, but they hate oil more.
So he was baiting him with that, saying that he'd like to see more trees planted, and so help me, they couldn't stand for that either.
That's a Tucker Carlson thing. Tucker talks about that a lot.
I'm telling you, they have so much ammunition against this opposite side of the aisle that it's really going to be fun to see how it plays out. Parscale and that army of people who are working to re-elect Trump. It's really going to be fun to watch this.
Yes. And, Reno is famous for its trees, I understand. We're an arbor city. We're a tree-loving city.
I
recognized.
like trees.
Yeah. And so and it is an effective weapon against the global warming. Obviously, it absorbs carbon dioxide. So
yeah, except that carbon dioxide is not bad for the environment.
Right.
It's actually good for the environment.
Yes.
Another common myth. So.
Right. Yes, I don't believe that carbon dioxide is the cause of global warming, and I got in a lot of trouble when I wrote that on paper for the Reno News and Review. They tried to get me fired over that sentiment. But
well, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Yes, I know.
Well, boy, did we have a lot of fun today,
yes.
huh?
And you can't help it. We have so much fodder for humor these days.
I'm telling you, they give it to us.
Well, hopefully see you next week.